consent that the quorum call be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Madam President, it's been more than a month since a violent mob stormed this building and attempted to disrupt the congressional certification of presidential electors, the vote of those electors. Rather than a peaceful transition of power, some of the mob turned their grievances into violent action. But again, that's the problem with mobs. No matter what the intentions were of those who were simply exercising their rights to free speech and free assembly, mobs invariably degenerate into the lowest common denominator. That element of the mob assaulted police officers, destroyed property, and trespassed in the halls of the United States Capitol. Some roamed these halls in search of members of Congress against whom they actually threatened harm. And if not for the heroism of the men and women of the Capitol Police, the human cost would have likely been higher. The criminal acts of the mob were disgraceful and indefensible. Regardless of party or politics, there should be no disagreement on that most basic point. The people making up this mob came to Washington with the idea that the results of the 2020 election were not final. President Trump fed that fantasy by repeatedly claiming the election was stolen, even after he had exhausted all of his legal remedies in dozens and dozens of lawsuits. The president's actions were reckless. He should have known better than to stoke a flame he could not and did not control. But the events of January the 6th are only part of the story, and it is the congressional response, including impeachment, that I now want to talk about. Simply put, this snap impeachment raises serious questions about fundamental fairness, due process, or more accurately, a lack thereof. Unlike previous impeachments, there was no formal inquiry, no investigation, no hearings, no witnesses, no cross-examination, no nothing. We know impeachment is not like a traditional judicial proceeding. It's not a court of law, but it does make common sense, and I think this was the direction we gave the House during the last impeachment trial, that it's the House's obligation to investigate, develop the evidence, and then charge, not the other way around. Historically, this has been true for impeachment proceedings. Each time the House has conducted a full-scale investigation before a vote on the articles of impeachment. As I said, that was the case last year when the House spent months deposing witnesses, holding hearings, building a case against the president before ever announcing formal charges. But this time around, they took an entirely different approach. In attempting to justify this unprecedented departure from a fair and dignified proceeding, some of our Democratic friends claim that no evidence needs to be presented, saying that we were all witnesses to what happened on January the 6th, and that we can be jurors, witnesses, and in the words of at least one Democratic senator, victims, all at the same time. This week, President Trump's defense team will have the opportunity to present its case, and I expect a lack of due process to be a major area of focus, and rightfully so. Unfortunately, that's not the only problem with this impeachment trial. The Constitution requires the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court to preside over the impeachment trial of a president. But since this is the trial of a former president, a private citizen, someone who no longer holds office, Chief Justice Roberts will not be presiding. As a result, the senior senator from Vermont will now serve as both a judge and a juror, in addition to being a witness, I presume, and in the words of another senator, a victim. I respect Senator Leahy, but the fact of the matter is he cannot be an impartial arbiter. He has a conflict of interest. Following the House's impeachment vote, Senator Leahy called President Trump the greatest threat to the Constitution and to American democracy in a generation. He voted to convict Donald Trump during the last impeachment trial and apparently has already decided to do it again in this trial. The fact of the matter is no American, let alone a former president, should be tried before a juror who's already determined guilt or innocence and who also serves as a judge. I want to be abundantly clear, though, Madam President, on one point. President Trump's words and actions leading up to the attack were reckless and wrong. But as we all know, the constitutional standard for impeachment isn't recklessness. Treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors, those are the offenses that the Constitution allows Congress to impeach and remove a president from office for violating or from committing. Which brings us to one of the biggest concerns I have. Donald Trump is no longer president of the United States. He's a private citizen. Our Democratic colleagues moved so fast that they could impeach the president while he was in office, but failed to transmit the articles to the Senate until he became a private citizen. Legal experts have debated not only the constitutionality of trying a former president, but also the wisdom of doing so, and I share concerns on both those fronts. I think this ill-timed impeachment trial sets a dangerous precedent for future former presidents. As politicized as impeachment has become, it could become a reoccurring political exercise that would be toxic for our democracy. Prominent Democrats have warned about the dangers of using impeachment as a political weapon against an opposing party. During the impeachment inquiry of President Clinton, Senator Leahy himself counseled, a partisan impeachment cannot command the respect of the American people. It's no more valid than a stolen election. I agree with him. The problem with one party using impeachment to exact political retribution on an opposing party's president at the end of his term, or even after that president has left office, seems quite obvious to me. It's political retribution. Depending on which party controls Congress and which occupies the White House, this could turn into a regular blemish on our democracy. Rather than focusing together on our future in a new administration, seeking common ground and unity as President Biden has called for, such a precedent of trying a former president could create an endless feedback loop of recrimination. I think this is a dangerous and destructive path, and I would implore my colleagues on both sides to consider the long-term implications of this precedent. As Justice Story explained, the framers saw the Senate as a tribunal, in his words, removed from popular power and passions and from the more dangerous influence of mere party spirit, and was guided by deep responsibility to future times. So as before, Madam President, I don't take my role as a juror lightly, and I'll reserve final judgment until both the House impeachment managers and President Trump's defense team have had the opportunity to present their cases. But I do think, indeed I fear, we're skating on very thin ice and are in danger of inflicting great harm to our country by this rushed, unfair, and partisan proceeding. May God help us.